The diner was the kind of place that never really closed. It just changed shifts. At 10:15 on a Friday night, every booth was packed. The kitchen was behind on 3 orders, and the overhead lights buzzed with that particular frequency that gave everyone a headache, but nobody bothered to fix. Marcus pulled open the glass door, and the smell hit him first. Burnt coffee, fried onions, something sweet from the pie display near the register. He hadn't planned on stopping here. He'd been driving home from his mother's house with Lily half asleep in the back seat, a tattered coloring book face down in her lap. But she'd asked for pancakes, the ones with the little blueberries, and Marcus had turned left instead of right because he almost never said no to that particular request. "Stay here, baby," he said, glancing at her in the mirror. "I'll be 2 minutes." "Promise?" Lily's voice was already thick with sleep. "Promise." He stepped inside. The hostess didn't look up. He moved toward the counter to place a to-go order, sidestepping a busboy with a full tray, and that's when the world narrowed down to a single point across the room. She was carrying a loaded tray toward table 7, moving carefully the way people move when they're in pain but can't afford to show it. Her uniform was wrinkled. Her hair was pulled back into a bun that had mostly given up on itself. And she was pregnant, visibly, heavily, in the final stretch of it, her belly pressing against the fabric of her apron as she leaned forward to set down a plate. Marcus didn't move. He told himself it wasn't her. His brain ran through the logic quickly. 3 years, wrong city, wrong situation. But then she straightened up and turned slightly to say something to the table, and the light caught the left side of her face, and every argument he'd been building collapsed. It was Tasha. Not the Tasha he remembered. This one looked like someone had taken the original and worn her down. Not broken, but stripped of something that used to make her seem untouchable. She was thinner everywhere except for the pregnancy, and even the way she stood, slightly guarded, slightly braced, said she'd been holding herself like that for a long time. The floor manager appeared from nowhere, a thick man with a clipboard and no patience. He stopped beside her and kept his voice low but not quiet enough. "You mixed up the Henderson's order again. That's twice this week." He didn't wait for her to respond. "You're moving slow. I've got 4 tables waiting." Tasha kept her eyes down. "It won't happen again." "Make sure it doesn't." He walked away. She stood still for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to absorb it, not long enough to fall apart, and then she turned to reach for her next tray. That's when she saw Marcus. The tray tilted. She caught it. Her face did something complicated and fast, a sequence of expressions he couldn't fully read, but the one thing he could read clearly, cutting straight through 3 years of silence and confusion and grief, was this. She was afraid. Not startled, not embarrassed, afraid the way people look when they see something they've been trying very hard to avoid. She turned away, moved toward the kitchen. Marcus took 2 steps forward. "Tasha." She stopped but didn't turn around, her shoulders pulled inward. "Please." Her voice barely rose above the noise of the diner. "Don't." Then she pushed through the kitchen door and disappeared. If you're watching this for the first time, welcome. This channel tells real human stories. Love, loss, the kind of choices people make when life doesn't give them clean options. If that's the kind of story you're here for, hit subscribe and come along. Now let's get back to Marcus. Marcus stood at the counter for a long moment. The hostess was finally looking at him, waiting. He ordered the blueberry pancakes to go, paid in cash, and walked back out to the car. Lily was asleep. The coloring book had slid to the floor. He buckled her belt tighter, started the engine, and sat in the parking lot for a full minute before pulling out. Marcus James had grown up learning that life didn't owe him clean answers. He was 34 years old, worked as an electrician for a mid-size contractor in Atlanta, and lived in a 2-bedroom apartment small enough that Lily's laughter filled every corner of it. The place wasn't much: a couch they'd picked together at a thrift store, crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator, a kitchen table that wobbled if you put your elbows on the left side, but it was theirs, and he had made it feel like something solid. He and Natasha, Tasha, always Tasha, had been married for 4 years before she left. He'd come home one afternoon to find Lily sitting on the kitchen floor with a bowl of dry cereal and a confused expression, and a single piece of paper folded on the counter. "Don't look for me. This is the best thing for you and Lily." That was all. No explanation. No argument that had finally gone too far. No warning signs he could find when he went back and searched every memory of the weeks before she disappeared. She was just gone. And the absence of a reason had been, in some ways, worse than any reason could have been. He'd called her number until it was disconnected. He'd asked her sister, who claimed not to know anything. He'd spent 2 weeks in a fog that he wasn't proud of, and then Lily, barely 3 years old, had climbed into his lap one evening, pressed her small hands against his face, and said, "Boo-boo, Daddy?" in a voice that rearranged something permanently inside him. He became the father Lily needed. Not the hurt man, not the abandoned husband, the father. He learned to braid hair badly and improve slowly. He learned which nightmares needed a glass of water and which ones needed him to stay until morning. He showed up, day after day, when showing up was the only answer he had. He had buried Tasha deep. He told himself he'd made peace with not knowing why she left. He had not, in fact, made peace with it. He brought Lily inside. She barely woke when he carried her to her room, only long enough to ask if she'd missed the pancakes. "They're in the fridge," he said. "Tomorrow." She was asleep before he finished the sentence. Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and stared at the wobbling edge of it. He thought about the way Tasha had looked carrying that tray. He thought about the fear on her face when she'd seen him. He thought about the pregnancy, which meant she'd been somewhere, doing something for 3 years, and that somewhere had led to this. A diner uniform, a manager who spoke to her like she was disposable, and a body that looked like it had been running on fumes for a very long time. "Please, don't." Not "I can explain," not "I'm sorry," just "don't." He turned the glass in his hands. Outside, a car passed with its music too loud, then faded. He sat there until the apartment was fully quiet. In the morning, he called his mother and asked her to watch Lily for a few hours. Then he drove back to the diner, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and waited. Tasha's shift started at 9. He watched her come in through the side entrance, moving with the careful, deliberate pace of someone whose body was asking her to slow down and who had decided not to listen. She didn't see him right away. He gave her 10 minutes, let her get settled, let the morning rush thin out, and then he crossed the floor and sat down across from her at a back table while she was refilling the sugar dispensers. She looked up. For just a second, something moved across her face that wasn't fear. Something older. Something that almost resembled relief. Then it was gone. "Marcus." Her voice was flat, controlled. "Tasha." She looked back down at the dispenser. "You need to go," she said. "Not yet. There's nothing to talk about. Then it'll be a short conversation." She set the dispenser down and picked up a rag, wiping the table in slow, methodical strokes. Like if she just kept her hands moving, he might disappear. He watched her for a moment. Then quietly, "Why did you leave?" "Nothing." "At least tell me you're okay." Her hands stopped moving, just for a second. Then she folded the rag, set it on the table, and stood. "I'm asking you one more time," she said. "Please go." She walked back toward the kitchen without waiting for his answer. The door swung shut behind her. Marcus left, but he did not stop thinking. And 2 days later, he came back. He found her in the parking lot on Tuesday, 20 minutes before her shift, sitting on a concrete barrier at the edge of the lot with a plastic container of rice and beans balanced on her knee. She was eating slowly, the way people eat when they're trying to make something small last as long as possible. Marcus parked, walked over, and sat down on the barrier beside her without asking. She didn't look up. "You're back." "I am." "I told you there was nothing to talk about." "You told me to go." "I went." He paused. "I came back." She kept eating. A car pulled out of the lot, radio going. In the distance, the highway moved with its constant low noise. Tasha pressed the lid down on her container and set it beside her without finishing it. "The baby isn't yours," she said. In case that's what you're thinking. I wasn't thinking that. Good. She kept her eyes on the middle distance. So there's nothing here that involves you. You're sitting in a parking lot eating cold rice out of a container, Marcus said. You look like you haven't slept in 3 days. The man you work for talks to you like you're a number on a spreadsheet. He turned to look at her. I've known you for 9 years, Tasha. You can tell me to leave, but don't tell me there's nothing here. She was quiet for a long moment. A muscle in her jaw worked. Why did you leave? He asked again. Same question. Steady this time, like he had all day. She picked up the food container and stood. I need to get inside, she said. At least tell me where you're staying. She hesitated, just barely, then walked toward the service entrance without answering. The door closed behind her. Marcus looked at the half-eaten container she'd left behind on the concrete, and he sat there a little longer before getting up. He started asking around. Not loudly, not in any way that could get back to the wrong people. He reached out to an old friend of Tasha's named Deja, someone who used to come over for Sunday dinners back when Marcus and Tasha were still together. Deja picked up on the third ring, and when Marcus explained that he'd seen Tasha, Deja's voice dropped half an octave. She doing okay? I don't know, that's why I'm asking. A silence, then, did she say anything to you about why she left? No. Deja sighed, a long, tired sound, like someone finally setting down something heavy. Marcus, I don't know how much I should be the one to tell you this. Just tell me. He sat in his car for a long time after the call ended. Here was what he now knew. 3 years ago, Tasha's father had taken out a loan from a private lender, the kind of arrangement that didn't come with paperwork or interest rates, just with consequences. The man connected to that debt was named Devin Briggs. Devin wasn't a lender himself. He was the kind of person who managed things on behalf of someone else. And the way he managed things involved showing up at people's homes, workplaces, and in one case, at a child's school pickup. Devin had come to see Tasha, not about the money. Her father had already arranged payments for that. Devin came because he'd taken an interest in Tasha herself, and Devin was not the kind of man who took an interest lightly. When she refused him, he made things clear. As long as she was near Marcus and Lily, they would never be fully safe. He knew where Marcus worked. He knew Lily's school. He said it once, quietly, and didn't need to say it again. Tasha had not told Marcus because she knew what Marcus would do. He would have gone straight at the problem, and Devin Briggs had the kind of connections that made that approach dangerous. She had not gone to the police because Devin had relationships there, and her father was dying, and she could not hold everything at once. She believed, and Deja confirmed this slowly, reluctantly, that disappearing was the only move she had. If she wasn't near Marcus and Lily, Devin had no reason to use them. She had been living with that calculation for 3 years. The person Marcus had spent 3 years thinking of as someone who didn't love him enough to stay had actually loved him enough to leave without explanation, knowing he would spend those years believing exactly that. He sat in the car until the windows fogged. Then he got out because he had to pick up Lily from school in 40 minutes, and she would notice if he seemed wrong, and he wasn't ready to seem wrong in front of his daughter. He went back to the diner on Thursday evening. This time he didn't wait outside. He walked in during the dinner rush, found a seat at the counter, and waited until Tasha swung by with a coffee pot. She saw him. Her face went careful. He said quietly, I talked to Deja. The coffee pot stopped moving. He watched her absorb it. The knowledge that the wall she'd kept up for 3 years had finally developed a crack. She didn't confirm anything. She didn't deny anything. She just stood there for a moment, and in that moment she looked for the first time since he'd walked back into her life, not afraid, just exhausted down to the bone. This isn't the place, she said. I know. I'm not here to fight. He kept his voice low. I just needed you to know that I know. She filled his coffee cup, even though he hadn't ordered coffee, and moved on to the next customer. But before she turned away, he caught it. The smallest exhale. The kind that happens when you've been holding something in for so long you almost forget what it feels like to let any of it out. It happened on a Saturday night, 9 days after Marcus first saw her in the diner. He had been stopping by regularly, not every day, not intrusively, just enough to establish a quiet presence that said, "I'm not leaving." He'd brought Lily on 2 of those visits, sitting in a booth while Lily colored and Tasha moved through her tables. Lily didn't ask who the lady was. She was 6. She was interested in her hot chocolate. That Saturday, Marcus was just leaving a booth when he heard the sound. A tray hitting the floor, followed by a sharp collective intake of breath from the surrounding tables. He turned. Tasha was gripping the edge of a booth with both hands, her face gone completely pale, her lips slightly parted like she was trying to find air that wasn't cooperating. The tray and its contents, 2 plates, 2 glasses, were on the floor. Nobody moved to help her except Marcus, who crossed the room in 4 seconds. "Hey," he put a hand on her arm. "Look at me." Her eyes found him. They were glassy. "I'm fine," she said, which was obviously false. "You're not fine." The manager appeared from somewhere. "What's going on?" "Call an ambulance," Marcus said, not looking at him. "She just needs to—" "Her blood pressure is up and she's holding onto that booth because her legs aren't working right. Call an ambulance or I will." The paramedics confirmed it. Elevated blood pressure, swollen ankles, symptoms consistent with early preeclampsia. They said she needed to go in and be monitored. Tasha didn't argue. She didn't have the energy to argue. But she turned to Marcus in the ambulance with something that was almost anger. "You don't have to come," she said. "I know. I mean it. There's no reason for you to—" "Tasha." He said her name the way he used to, even unhurried. "Stop." She stopped. Before he left in the ambulance with her, he caught the manager by the door. The man barely looked up. "After this, tell her not to come back," he said flat. "I can't run a floor with that kind of liability." Marcus looked at him for a long moment, then turned and stepped outside without a word. Some people weren't worth the energy. The hospital waiting area was the color of a waiting area. Beige, fluorescent, time-resistant. Marcus sat in a plastic chair and looked at his phone. The estimate the intake coordinator had given him for 2 days of close observation maternity care was not a number Marcus had been expecting. He looked at it. Then he opened his banking app and looked at his balance. He had been saving for 8 months, carefully, a fixed amount each month, protecting it the way he protected most things he cared about. The money was earmarked for Lily's private school enrollment fee, the one he'd registered her for last spring because the public school 2 blocks over had flooded twice, and the program at St. Catherine's had an art class, and a reading specialist, and a yard with actual grass. The numbers were almost exactly the same. He sat with that for a long time. Not agonizing over it. He wasn't the kind of man who agonized. He was the kind of man who went quiet and thought things through. He thought about Lily's face when she'd come home from the St. Catherine's orientation. He thought about the woman in the other room who had spent 3 years alone with a decision she'd made to keep his daughter safe. He got up, went to the desk, and paid. He called his mother from a chair near the vending machines and asked her to keep Lily overnight. His mother, to her credit, asked only one question. "Is everything all right?" He said, "Not completely, but it will be." She said, "Okay, baby." He loved her deeply for both of those things. Then he sat back down in the plastic chair and, for the first time in a very long time, Marcus James let himself fall apart a little. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands and his shoulders shaking in the way men shake when they've been holding things for too long and the body stops asking permission. He wasn't crying for Tasha, and he wasn't crying for himself, or not exactly. He was crying because he just understood something about the last 3 years that fundamentally changed the shape of them, and because understanding it didn't make them shorter or less painful or give back any of what had been lost. He was also crying because he knew, sitting in that chair, that he had already made his choice. He had made it in the parking lot days ago, probably. He'd just been waiting for himself to catch up. He dried his face with the back of his hand, bought a water from the machine, sat back down. His phone lit up. A message from an unknown number, but he knew. He opened it. "You don't have to stay, I mean that." "Thank you for the hospital. I'll figure out the rest. T." He read it twice, set the phone down on the seat beside him. He did not leave. They released Tasha on Monday morning with medication, a follow-up appointment, and strict instructions about rest, reduced stress, and limited physical exertion. The attending physician said it in the careful way doctors say things when they know the person in front of them is not in a position to simply follow the advice. Tasha sat on the edge of the hospital bed, already dressed, already braced for whatever came next. She had nowhere to go. The room she'd been renting, a back bedroom in a house with 3 other tenants, had a landlord who would not appreciate her returning in this condition, and the diner job was gone. She had worked through all of this while Marcus wasn't in the room, arriving at a neat internal summary. She was, as she had been for 3 years, on her own. Then Marcus walked in carrying 2 coffees and her discharge paperwork and said, "I'm taking you to my place." She looked at him. "Marcus, it's temporary. You need somewhere clean and quiet." He handed her the coffee. "My couch pulls out. There's a bathroom with a door that locks. Nobody will bother you." "Lily is there." "I know." Tasha looked down at the coffee cup. She turned it in her hands. "She doesn't know who I am." "No," Marcus said. "She doesn't." A pause settled between them. Tasha looked up. "What are you going to tell her?" "The truth," he said. "Enough of it for a 6-year-old." She almost said no. He could see her building the argument. Practical objections, reasonable concerns, the same careful self-sufficiency that had kept her alive and alone for 3 years. He didn't push. He waited. And then she nodded once, small, and picked up her bag. Lily was in the living room when they walked in, belly down on the rug with a sheet of construction paper and approximately every crayon she owned spread around her in a wide perimeter. She looked up at Marcus first, then at the woman behind him, then back at Marcus. "Daddy, who's that?" Marcus set Tasha's bag down. He sat on the floor cross-legged next to Lily at her level, the way he always did when he needed her to really hear him. "Her name is Tasha," he said. "Her and me, we used to know each other a long time ago, before you were old enough to remember." Lily studied him. She was a child who listened with her whole face. "Are you friends?" Marcus thought about that. "We're figuring it out." Lily turned and looked at Tasha with the direct, unfiltered appraisal only small children can deliver without cruelty. Her eyes traveled down to Tasha's stomach and stayed there. "There's a baby in there," Lily said, not a question. "Yeah," Tasha said softly from the doorway. "There is." Lily looked at Marcus again, then back at Tasha. Then she picked up an orange crayon, returned to her drawing, and said, "Can I pick the name?" Something in Tasha's face broke open and reassembled itself in the span of a second. She pressed her lips together and nodded, even though Lily wasn't looking anymore. Marcus stood up. He didn't say anything. Some moments don't need commentary. That night, after Lily was in bed, Tasha sat at the kitchen table and Marcus sat across from her. And the thing they had been circling for 2 weeks finally had nowhere left to go. He didn't start with questions. He just said, "Tell me what happened." And she did. She told him about her father's debt, which had accumulated quietly over years before it became impossible. She told him about Devin, how he'd first appeared as someone reasonable, almost helpful, and how that changed. She told him about the afternoon Devin had stood in her kitchen while Marcus was at work, speaking in a calm, measured voice about Marcus's job site, the name of Lily's daycare, the street their apartment was on. He said it once and didn't need to repeat himself. She told him what it had cost her to write that note, how many times she'd written it and thrown it away, how she'd packed a bag while Lily was napping and sat in the parking lot of a gas station 2 miles away and cried until she couldn't, and then drove away before she lost the nerve. She told him about the years after, moving between cities, working whatever was available, the relationship that had lasted 8 months and ended badly, leaving her pregnant and in a city where she didn't have much of a footing. The decision to stay and have the baby because she was 31 years old and it was the one thing happening in her life that wasn't soaked in loss. She told him she'd come back to Atlanta because her money ran out and this was the only city where she knew enough people to find a room and a job quickly. She had not planned on running into him. She had known, somewhere in the back of her mind, that it was possible. Atlanta was not as large as it seemed, and she had told herself she could handle it if it happened. She had been wrong about that. Marcus listened to all of it.
He didn't interrupt.
He didn't let his face do the thing it wanted to do when she got to the part about Devin in their kitchen. He just listened until she finished, and then he sat with it for a moment. "You should have told me," he said. "I know that now. I would have figured it out. We would have figured it out." "I know that now, too." She looked at the table. "I didn't then. I was scared and I thought I was protecting you and I couldn't see any other way. I'm not asking you to think I was right. I was wrong. I just—" She stopped, pressed her hands flat on the table. "I need you to know that I didn't leave because I wanted to." The kitchen was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. From down the hall came the faint sound of Lily shifting in her sleep. Marcus exhaled slowly through his nose. Then he leaned forward and folded his hands on the table between them. "I know," he said. She looked up. "I know you didn't," he said. "That doesn't mean it didn't hurt."
Both things are true.
He held her gaze. "I'm not pretending the last 3 years didn't happen, but I'm also not pretending I don't understand why you did what you did. Not anymore." Tasha's eyes went bright. She didn't cry. She was the kind of person who fought crying the way other people fought off sleep, through sheer will. But her jaw worked, and she looked away, and when she looked back, something had shifted between them. Not healed, not even close to healed, but named, finally. Set down on the table where they could both see it. "What about Devin?" Marcus said. She shook her head slightly. "He's still around. I don't know if he's even still paying attention to me. It's been 3 years. We're not going to find out the hard way." She frowned. "Marcus, I'm not going to do anything stupid," he said. "I know a detective, retired Atlanta PD. He'll know whether Devin is still a real threat or whether this is something we can report officially." He paused. "But either way, you're not handling it by yourself. That's done." She opened her mouth and he could see her about to say, "You don't have to do this," and he shook his head once, and she closed it. The detective's name was Gerald Okafor. He had retired from the Atlanta PD 14 months ago and spent most of his time now fixing up a cabin in North Georgia, which meant he had both the connections Marcus needed and the availability to use them. Marcus called him the next morning. Gerald was cautious and thorough. He asked the right questions, took notes, and called back 3 days later with a summary. Devin Briggs had, in fact, been the subject of an ongoing investigation for 18 months related to a separate extortion case. Approaching the department's task force directly with Tasha's account would not only be credible, it would likely be welcomed. Gerald offered to make the introduction personally. Marcus relayed all of this to Tasha on a Thursday evening while Lily was at the neighbors. She sat and listened, and then said nothing for a long moment. "I've been afraid of this for 3 years, she said finally. "I know. Going to the police. If it doesn't work—" "Gerald thinks it'll work," Marcus said, "and I'll go with you, every step." She looked at him. Why? It was a real question, not self-pity, not deflection. She genuinely needed to understand why a man she had hurt this badly was sitting in his kitchen offering to walk into a police station beside her. Marcus thought about it seriously because she deserved a serious answer. "Because the thing you did hurt me," he said. "And because you did it to keep my daughter safe. And because those two things don't cancel each other out, and I can hold both of them at once." He paused. "And because Lily asked me last night why the lady in the living room looks sad, and I didn't have a good answer." Tasha laughed, a short, wet sound, halfway between a laugh and the alternative. "She said that?" "Verbatim." She pressed a hand over her mouth. The laugh faded. She nodded. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." They went on a Friday morning. Gerald met them outside and walked them in. Tasha gave her account to an investigator named Castillo, who treated her with the quiet, professional respect of someone accustomed to receiving information that mattered. Marcus sat beside her the whole time and said nothing. Not because he didn't want to, but because Tasha didn't need him to speak. She needed him to stay, and he did. It took 2 hours. Walking out into the bright morning air afterward, Tasha stood on the sidewalk and took a long breath. "I feel weird," she said. "Good weird or bad weird?" She thought about it. "Both." "That sounds right," he said. 2 weeks later, with the immediate danger of Devon addressed and Tasha's health stabilizing under proper care, Marcus helped her find a small apartment 2 floors below his in the same building. It wasn't much. 1 bedroom, a kitchen barely wide enough for 2 people to stand in, windows that faced a brick wall. But the building manager was a decent woman named Patrice, who had once raised 2 kids alone and didn't ask unnecessary questions. And the church Marcus attended quietly covered the first month's deposit after he explained the situation to the pastor. The apartment was Tasha's. Her own space, her own key, her own footing. Close enough to matter, far enough to be hers. She was painting the bedroom a pale yellow the afternoon her water broke. She called Marcus, and he was down the stairs and at her door in 4 minutes with his keys in his hand, and Lily, carried out of bed still wearing her pajamas, heavy against his shoulder. It was 4 in the morning. The city was dark and quiet. At the hospital, Marcus's mother arrived 20 minutes later and took a drowsy Lily from his arms without a word, wrapping her in a blanket from the car. Lily, not entirely sure what was happening, looked at her grandmother and then at her father and then at the hospital doors. "Is Tasha okay?" she asked. "She's having her baby," Marcus said. Lily considered this with the gravity of a 6-year-old facing important information. "Is it scary?" "A little," Marcus said, "but she's brave." Lily nodded, apparently satisfied, and let herself be led to the waiting area. Marcus sat in the hallway outside the delivery room and could not have told anyone how long he was there. His mother sat across from him with Lily asleep in her lap, the child's hair fanned out across her grandmother's arm. The hallway was quiet in the way hospitals are quiet in the middle of the night. Not empty, but hushed, like the building itself was being careful. He thought about a lot of things sitting there. He thought about the note on the counter 3 years ago. He thought about all the mornings he'd made breakfast for 1 child and not 2 adults. All the nights he'd been too tired and too proud to admit he still missed having someone on the other side of the room. He thought about what it meant to know the whole story now, not just the part that had hurt him, but the part underneath it, the part Tasha had carried alone for years because she loved them enough to disappear. A nurse came through the door. "Sir, are you family?" Marcus looked at Lily sleeping across the hallway, hair still messy from being pulled out of bed in the dark. He looked at his mother's steady face. He thought about the kitchen table conversation, the police station, the morning his daughter had asked to name a baby she'd never met and hadn't hesitated for even a second. "Yes," he said, "I am." The nurse nodded and held the door. Tasha was tired in the way that only comes from that particular effort. Scraped clean and somehow still present. The baby was in a small cart beside her, wrapped tightly, eyes shut, face doing the complicated quiet work of existing outside of a body for the first time. Marcus stood at the edge of the room. He didn't go any further until she looked at him. She did after a moment. And what was on her face wasn't what he'd expected. It wasn't relief or gratitude or the expression people wear when they feel they've been rescued. It was something quieter, the face of someone who had been bracing for a long time and had finally cautiously stopped. "Hey," she said. "Hey." "She has a lot of hair." Marcus stepped forward and looked down at the baby. She did, in fact, have an impressive amount of dark hair for someone roughly 40 minutes old. "Does she have a name yet?" Tasha shook her head. "I told Lily she could pick." Marcus exhaled, something between a laugh and a breath. "She's going to pick something from a cartoon," he said. "I know," Tasha said. "I've decided I'm okay with that." He pulled the chair close to the bed and sat down. Not because everything was figured out, it wasn't. Not because the damage was undone, it couldn't be, not entirely, not quickly. But because they were both still here, in the same room, and neither of them was looking for the door. Outside in the hallway, Lily slept in her grandmother's arms, already dreaming of the name she would choose. There's something about this story that stays with you, not because it ends perfectly, but because it ends honestly. Marcus didn't win anything. He didn't get back the 3 years he lost, or the version of his marriage that might have been. What he got was the truth, late but whole. And he chose to do something with it, not out of obligation, not out of sentimentality, but because he was the kind of man who, when given the full picture, decided that what mattered most was what happened next. That's the thing about forgiveness that nobody tells you. It's not about the other person deserving it. It's about deciding that you're done letting the wound run the rest of your life. Tasha made a wrong choice for the right reasons. Marcus was hurt by it for years. And somewhere between a diner booth and a hospital hallway, they both chose to stop carrying things alone. If that kind of story speaks to you, stories about real people making hard choices, about love that survives the complicated parts, about what it actually means to start over, then this channel is where you belong. Subscribe, hit the bell, and come back for the next one. These stories don't run out because people don't run out of being human.